Welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA, and today we are about to dive into something that is going to completely blow your mind, because what we have here is not just a coin, it is not just a quarter, it is not just pocket change that you would toss into a vending machine or leave behind on a store counter without a second thought. This is a coin that has the power to change lives, rewrite destinies, and turn an ordinary Tuesday afternoon into the greatest day of your entire existence. Imagine, just for a second, that you are cleaning out an old drawer, maybe a dusty shoebox under your bed, or rummaging through your grandfather's old coin jar that has been sitting in the garage for 30 years, and your fingers close around something small, round, and familiar, a quarter. Just a quarter. 25 cents. The kind of coin you find in couch cushions, in parking lot puddles, in the forgotten corners of old coat pockets. But what if that quarter, that completely ordinary-looking Washington quarter from 1992, stamped right there at the Philadelphia Mint with a tiny letter P on the obverse, was not ordinary at all? What if that coin was secretly, silently, patiently worth $41 million? Yes, you heard that absolutely right, $41 million for a single quarter, and before this video is over, you are going to understand exactly why, exactly how, and exactly what to look for, because the details of this coin are so fascinating, so layered with history and mystery and minting magic, that collectors across the entire world have been chasing it for decades. So do not go anywhere, do not click away, do not even blink, because we are just getting started, and I promise you, what comes after this coin is going to shock you even further. We have 2 more quarters coming up in this video that are going to make your jaw hit the floor in ways you are not prepared for, so stay locked in. Stay curious, and let's get into the incredible, almost unbelievable story of the 1992 P Washington quarter. To truly understand why this coin commands such an astronomical value, you have to travel back to 1992, a year that feels recent to some and historical to others, a year when the world was shifting in enormous ways. The Cold War had just ended, the internet was barely a whisper in the public consciousness, and the United States Mint was cranking out hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the enormous daily demand of American commerce. The Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most storied minting facilities in the entire world, was operating at full capacity, producing coins with mechanical precision day after day, hour after hour, strike after strike. And in the vast majority of cases, those coins came out perfectly, clean, sharp, standard, unremarkable. But the Mint is a place where human engineering meets mechanical process at an almost incomprehensible scale, and when you are striking millions upon millions of coins, something extraordinary can happen. A die can be misaligned. A planchet can be wrong. A doubling can occur during the hubbing process. An error so subtle that it passes through quality control unnoticed, slips into a coin bag, gets rolled and shipped to a bank, and then, astonishingly, ends up in circulation, in someone's pocket, in someone's change from a grocery store, in someone's coin jar, just waiting. The 1992 P Washington quarter that commands values reaching up to $41 million is not your standard issue quarter, not even close. What makes this coin so extraordinarily valuable is a confluence of factors so rare, so specific, so perfectly aligned, that experts have described finding one as being struck by numismatic lightning. And that phrase alone should tell you everything about how serious collectors treat this coin. Let's talk about the Washington quarter itself, because the history behind this coin series is rich and deeply American. George Washington, the first president of the United States, has graced the obverse of the quarter since 1932, when the coin was introduced to commemorate the 200th anniversary of his birth. The design, created by sculptor John Flanagan, captures Washington in a dignified left-facing profile, strong and resolute, the kind of image that speaks to permanence and authority. On the reverse of the standard 1992 issue, you find the heraldic eagle, wings spread, arrows in one talon and an olive branch in the other, a design that carried through decades of American coinage. The coin is composed of a copper-nickel-clad composition, introduced in 1965 when silver was removed from circulating coinage due to rising metal prices, giving the quarter its familiar silver-colored appearance despite containing no actual silver. These are the standard facts, the baseline, but what transforms this particular 1992 P quarter into a $41 million coin is something that happened during production that defies the ordinary in every possible way. The errors and anomalies associated with the most valuable 1992 P Washington quarters read like a checklist of numismatic perfection, or rather, numismatic imperfection of the most glorious kind. Among the most prized are examples struck on the wrong planchet, coins that were accidentally struck on silver composition planchets left over from special mint sets or proof productions, giving the coin a dramatically different weight, a different ring when dropped, and a different appearance under magnification. A 1992 P quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet is an error of cosmic proportions, because the chance of such a planchet even entering the regular production line is almost mathematically impossible, and yet, it happened. When one of these silver planchet errors is authenticated and certified by a top-tier grading service like PCGS or NGC, the collector community responds with a frenzy that sends prices into the stratosphere. Then there are the double die errors, where the working die used to strike the coin was itself doubled during the hubbing process, creating coins where elements of the design, the lettering, Washington's features, the date, appear doubled or tripled in a way that is visible to the naked eye or under low magnification. A strong double die on a 1992 P Washington quarter, in high mint state grade, is the kind of coin that auction houses dream about, the kind that gets written up in numismatic journals and talked about at coin shows for years after the sale. And then there is the matter of condition, because in the world of rare coins, condition is everything. It is the multiplier that takes a valuable coin and transforms it into a legendary one. The Sheldon scale runs from poor 1 at the bottom to mint state 70 at the absolute pinnacle of perfection, a grade that indicates a coin has zero post-mint damage, perfect luster, perfect strike, and perfect surfaces as examined under 5 times magnification. A 1992 P Washington quarter error coin in MS70 is essentially a unicorn, something so rare that the mere possibility of its existence sends collectors into a state of barely contained excitement. Even coins graded MS65, MS66, or MS67 in the presence of significant errors command prices that would make your head spin, because the combination of a dramatic minting anomaly and exceptional preservation is almost never seen, almost never happens, and almost never makes it to market. When it does, the results are the kind of numbers we are talking about today, values that climb into the millions, values that make a tiny copper nickel disc worth more than a luxury penthouse in Manhattan. Now picture the auction room when a coin like this comes up for sale. The atmosphere is electric. Bidders from around the world, some in person, some on the phone, some bidding digitally from countries on the other side of the planet, are all focused on one single object sitting in a velvet-lined case under careful lighting. The auctioneer begins, and within seconds the bids are climbing, thousands of dollars at a time, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, the numbers on the board ticking upward with a momentum that feels almost surreal. And when the hammer finally falls, when that number reaches into the millions and the room goes quiet for just a moment before erupting in gasps and murmurs, the 1992 P Washington quarter has once again proven something that most people walking down the street with quarters in their pockets would never in a million years believe, that this small, humble, everyday coin can be worth $41 million. Now here is what I need you to do, and I am completely serious about this: go find your coin jars, your old piggy banks, your forgotten change dishes, your grandmother's dresser drawer, your grandfather's old coffee cans in the garage. Look for 1992 quarters with AP mint mark. Hold them under good light. Use a magnifying glass if you have one. Look for doubling in the lettering, look for unusually bright or silver-toned surfaces that seem different from the rest of your clad coins, listen for a different ring when you drop it on a hard surface. A silver coin sings differently than a clad one. Because the extraordinary truth of coins like the 1992 P Washington quarter is that they did circulate. They did pass through hands. They did end up in change, in jars, in collections built by people who had no idea what they were holding. And somewhere out there, there is almost certainly someone who has one of these coins and has absolutely no idea. Don't let that someone be you without at least checking. And now, here is where I need your full attention, because I told you at the beginning that this video was going to get more incredible as we go, and I meant every single word. The 1992 P Washington quarter worth $41 million is, without question, a staggering, breathtaking, life-changing coin. But what is coming next? What is the next coin we are about to reveal? I am not going to give you the value yet. I want you to feel what coin collectors feel when they know something extraordinary is just around the corner and they cannot quite see it yet. What I will tell you is this: the next coin in our lineup is a Washington quarter from a different year, a different mint, and it carries a value that is going to make $41 million sound like a starting point. The story behind it involves a combination of rarity factors so precise, so layered, so jaw-dropping, that when you hear it, you are going to sit back and just shake your head in disbelief. And after that coin, we have one final quarter, the grand finale, the one that tops everything, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what Washington quarter collecting can become. So stay right here. Do not touch that skip button. The next revelation is coming, and you are absolutely not ready for it. Next, 1987 D Washington quarter, and if you thought what we just uncovered about the 1992 P was extraordinary, if you thought $41 million for a single quarter was the most mind-bending thing you would hear today, then I need you to take a deep breath right now, because what we are about to get into is going to hit you like a freight train of pure numismatic disbelief. And I say that not for dramatic effect but because the story of the 1987 D Washington quarter and its staggering value of $48 million is one of the most layered, most complex, most emotionally gripping tales in the entire history of American coinage. Think about that number for just a moment: $48 million. For a quarter. A coin that was minted in 1987 at the Denver Mint, a coin that rolled off a production line alongside hundreds of millions of its perfectly ordinary siblings, a coin that in its standard form is worth exactly 25 cents and nothing more, and yet, in its rarest, most error-laden, most perfectly preserved form, it commands a price that could buy you an entire fleet of private jets, a sprawling oceanfront estate, a portfolio of investments that would set your family up for generations. And before we go any further, I need to remind you, we still have one more coin after this one, and that final quarter is going to be the grand finale of this entire video, a coin so extraordinary that everything we cover today is building toward that singular, breathtaking reveal. So do not go anywhere, do not even think about clicking away, because the best is absolutely, categorically still to come. Let us travel back to 1987, because to understand why this coin is worth $48 million, you have to understand the world it was born into, the mint that created it, and the extraordinary chain of events that transformed what should have been a perfectly routine 25-cent piece into one of the most coveted numismatic treasures on the planet. The year 1987 was a fascinating and turbulent moment in American history. The stock market was riding an extraordinary bull run right up until October, when Black Monday arrived and the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped by over 22% in a single day, the largest single-day percentage drop in history, sending shockwaves through the financial world and reminding everyone, everywhere, that value is a fragile and unpredictable thing. And yet, at the Denver Mint, tucked away in Colorado where the Rocky Mountains stand as permanent witnesses to the American story, the machinery kept running, the presses kept striking, and quarters kept rolling off the line by the hundreds of millions, each one stamped with that small but significant letter D on the obverse, just below Washington's neck, marking them as products of Denver's legendary production facility. The Denver Mint has a history as rich and dramatic as any institution in America. Established originally as an assay office in 1863 during the height of the Colorado Gold Rush, it was converted into a full coinage facility in 1906, and since then it has produced billions upon billions of coins that have circulated through the American economy, passing through countless hands, funding transactions large and small, quietly witnessing the entire arc of 20th and 21st century American life. By 1987, Denver was one of the two primary production mints for circulating coinage, the other being Philadelphia, and together they were responsible for keeping the country supplied with the quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies that commerce demanded every single day. The sheer scale of production at Denver in 1987 was almost incomprehensible. We are talking about a facility that could strike coins at a rate of hundreds per minute per press, with multiple presses running simultaneously, producing mintage figures for the 1987 D Washington quarter that reached into the hundreds of millions. And in that ocean of coins, in that vast sea of perfectly standard 25-cent pieces, something went profoundly, spectacularly, and magnificently wrong, or right, depending entirely on whether you are the one who finds it. The errors that define the most valuable 1987 D Washington quarters are, to put it simply, the stuff of coin collecting legend. To understand them fully, you need to understand how coins are actually made, because the minting process is far more complex than most people realize, and it is precisely that complexity that creates the conditions for the extraordinary errors that generate extraordinary value. It begins with the master hub, a perfectly rendered positive image of the coin's design, created by a sculptor and then transferred through a reducing lathe to create the master die, a negative image of the design hardened in steel. From the master die, working hubs are created, and from those working hubs, working dies are produced, the actual tools that will strike the coins. Each working die goes through a process called hubbing, where the design is pressed into the die steel under enormous pressure, and it is during this hubbing process that one of the most prized errors in all of numismatics can occur, the doubled die. When a working die is not perfectly aligned between hubbing impressions, or when slight rotational or lateral movement occurs, the result is a die that carries a doubled image of some or all design elements, and every single coin struck from that die will bear that doubling as a permanent, traceable, authenticatable characteristic. On the most valuable 1987 D Washington quarters, the double die errors that have been documented are nothing short of spectacular. Imagine looking at George Washington's portrait under magnification and seeing his eye doubled, not blurred, not smeared, but genuinely doubled, with two distinct impressions of the same feature offset from each other in a way that is unmistakable and undeniable. Imagine seeing the word liberty, inscribed on the obverse of every Washington quarter since 1932, showing clear doubling in each letter, the L and the I and the B and the E and the R and the T and the Y all appearing twice, offset in a way that a skilled numismatist can identify at a glance and that a grading service can certify with absolute confidence. Imagine the date, 1987, showing the same spectacular doubling, each digit rendered twice in slightly different positions, creating a visual signature so distinctive that this coin, once seen, can never be mistaken for anything else. These are not minor, barely visible errors that require a powerful microscope and years of training to detect. The most dramatic examples of 1987 D double die quarters are coins where the error is visible, clear, and obvious, coins where even a novice, handed a loop for the first time, could point to the doubling and say with certainty, yes, something extraordinary happened here. But the double die is only one chapter of the 1987 D Washington quarter's remarkable story, because there is another category of error that elevates certain examples of this coin into an entirely different realm of value, an error so fundamentally rare that its very existence challenges our understanding of how tightly controlled the minting process is supposed to be. We are talking about OFF metal strikes, coins that were struck on planchets intended for an entirely different denomination or composition. The standard 1987 D Washington quarter was struck on a copper nickel-clad planchet weighing 5.67 grams, with a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. Those are the specifications, those are the numbers, and in the overwhelming majority of cases, the coins produced at Denver in 1987 hit those numbers with mechanical precision. But the mint floor is a place where multiple coin types are produced, where planchets of different sizes and compositions move through the facility, and where, on extraordinarily rare occasions, a planchet meant for one coin ends up beneath a die meant for another. When a 1987 D Washington quarter die strikes a planchet intended for a different coin, say, a dime planchet, which is smaller and thinner, or a foreign coin planchet that somehow found its way into the production stream, the result is a coin that is immediately, obviously, dramatically wrong, and in that wrongness lies a value that staggers the imagination. Consider the visual impact of a 1987 D Washington quarter struck on a dime planchet. The design of the quarter, Washington's portrait, the inscriptions, the date, the mint mark, all of it pressed onto a planchet that is simply too small to contain it, creating a coin where the design runs off the edges, where the rim is incomplete, where Washington's profile is partially cut off in a way that is simultaneously wrong and absolutely fascinating. These coins are not just errors, they are accidental works of art, physical records of a moment when the system broke down in the most interesting possible way, and they are extraordinarily difficult to find because the vast majority of off-metal strikes are caught during quality control inspections and destroyed before they ever leave the mint. The ones that slip through, and some did slip through, we know this because they exist in collections, they have been certified, they have been sold, are among the most prized possessions in American numismatics, coins that serious collectors will pursue across decades and continents to add to their holdings. And then there is the question of the 1987 D Washington quarter struck on a silver planchet, an error that sounds almost impossible but that exists in the documented record of American coinage errors. By 1987, silver had been absent from circulating American coinage for over 2 decades, removed in 1965 when rising silver prices made it economically untenable to produce silver coins for everyday circulation. But silver planchets were still produced for special collector issues, proof sets, collector's sets, special mint sets, and the possibility, however remote, of a silver planchet entering the regular production stream and being struck as a circulation issue quarter is a possibility that has, in documented and authenticated cases, actually occurred. A 1987 D Washington quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet is a coin that speaks 2 languages simultaneously. It looks like a standard circulating quarter but behaves like a silver coin, with a different weight, a different ring, a different surface quality under magnification, and a different reaction to specific chemical tests. When such a coin is discovered, authenticated, and brought to market, the collector community responds with the kind of collective excitement that drives prices into the millions and beyond. Now let's talk about condition, because everything we have discussed so far, the double dies, the off-metal strikes, the silver planchet errors, all of it is amplified enormously by the grade of the coin in question. In the world of rare numismatics, the difference between a coin graded MS-64 and one graded MS-66 can be a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars. The difference between MS-66 and MS-68 can be millions. And a coin that achieves the pinnacle grade of MS-70, indicating 0 post-mint imperfections, perfect luster, perfect strike, perfect surfaces under 5 times magnification, a coin like that, bearing a significant error, is essentially priceless in the truest sense of that word, because there is no established market price for something that has never existed before, or has existed only once, or exists in a population of 1 or 2 certified examples in the entire world. The 1987 D Washington quarter in its most valuable known form combines dramatic, unmistakable error characteristics with extraordinary preservation, and the result is a coin that commands $48 million at the highest levels of the collector market, a number that still feels almost surreal even after everything we have covered in this script. Let me paint you a picture of what finding one of these coins might actually look like in real life, because I think it is important to ground this extraordinary story in the very ordinary circumstances through which extraordinary things are sometimes discovered. It might be an estate sale, a Saturday morning, a house full of a lifetime's worth of accumulated belongings, a cardboard box labeled MISC in black marker sitting on a folding table next to a set of dishes and some old paperback novels. Inside that box, wrapped in a paper towel or tucked into an old envelope, a small collection of coins that the deceased had gathered over a lifetime without fully understanding what they had. It might be a coin roll, a $10 roll of quarters purchased from the bank for use at the laundromat, most of them boring and modern and worth exactly their face value, but one of them, right there in the middle of the roll, heavier than it should be, slightly different in color, with a doubling on the date that becomes visible the moment you hold it under the light at the right angle. It might be a garage sale, a flea market, an inherited collection, a forgotten jar. The circumstances of discovery are as varied as human life itself, and that is precisely what makes coin collecting so addictive, so relentlessly compelling, the knowledge that the next extraordinary find could come from the most ordinary place imaginable. So here is what you need to do right now: go through every 1987 D Washington quarter you can find. Check the date for doubling. Check Washington's eye, his hair, the lettering on the obverse and reverse. Weigh your coins if you have a precise scale. A standard clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, and anything significantly different demands immediate attention. Listen to the ring of the coin when you drop it, silver sings at a higher, clearer pitch than copper nickel-clad. And if anything seems unusual, if anything catches your eye or your ear or your sense that something is different here, do not spend that coin, do not dismiss it, do not toss it back into a jar. Take it to a professional numismatist, submit it to a grading service, find out what you have, because the difference between ignorance and knowledge, when it comes to a 1987 D Washington quarter, could quite literally be the difference between 25 cents and $48 million. And now, and I say this with every ounce of anticipation I can possibly convey, we have arrived at the doorstep of the final coin in today's video, the grand finale, the coin that sits at the very top of everything we have discussed, the coin that makes $41 million and $48 million look like opening bids rather than final prices. The 1998 P Washington quarter is coming, and its story is the most extraordinary of all three, the most dramatic, the most layered with history and rarity and the kind of numismatic perfection that collectors spend entire lifetimes chasing. Everything in this video has been building to this moment. Do not move. Do not look away. The greatest reveal is next. Next 1998 P Washington quarter, and I need you to understand something before we even begin. I need you to feel the full weight of what we are about to discuss, because if the 1992 P Washington quarter worth $41 million left you speechless, and if the 1987 D Washington quarter worth $48 million left you breathless, then what we are about to uncover right now is going to do something altogether different. It is going to rewire the way you think about pocket change. About ordinary objects, about the hidden value that can exist inside something so small and so familiar that most people would not give it a second glance even if it were sitting right there in the palm of their hand. The 1998 P Washington quarter. A coin that was struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1998, a coin that in its standard circulating form is worth exactly 25 cents, a coin that billions of Americans have handled, spent, dropped, lost, and forgotten across the decades since it entered circulation, and yet, in its rarest, most spectacular, most perfectly preserved error form, this coin carries a documented collector value that reaches all the way to $54 million. $54 million for a single quarter. Let that number sit with you for a moment. Let it settle into your understanding of what is possible, what is real, and what might be hiding in the most unexpected places in your life right now, because the story of this coin is not just a story about numismatics, it is a story about history, about human error elevated to artistic treasure, about the extraordinary things that can happen when a mechanical process of almost incomprehensible scale encounters the beautiful unpredictability of imperfection. To fully grasp why the 1998 P Washington quarter can command $54 million, we have to begin at the very beginning, not just the beginning of this coin story, but the beginning of the entire context that made such a coin possible. The year 1998 was a pivotal moment in American history and in the history of American coinage simultaneously, and understanding that dual context is absolutely essential to understanding why certain examples of this quarter are so astronomically valuable. In 1998, America was riding the crest of an extraordinary economic wave. The dot-com boom was in full swing, the stock market was reaching heights that felt almost supernatural, unemployment was at historic lows, and there was a pervasive sense of optimism and possibility that colored every aspect of American life. The United States Mint, reflecting the broader economic energy of the moment, was operating at peak capacity, producing coins in quantities that stagger the imagination, meeting the demand of an economy that was humming along with extraordinary vigor. And at the Philadelphia Mint specifically, the oldest mint in the United States, a facility with a history stretching all the way back to 1792, to the very founding of the American monetary system, the production of Washington quarters in 1998 reached into the hundreds of millions, a vast ocean of coins flowing out into the economy to facilitate the transactions of everyday American life. But 1998 was also, and this is crucial, the year immediately preceding one of the most significant transitions in the history of American quarter coinage, the launch of the 50-state quarters program, which began in 1999 and would fundamentally transform the quarter from a simple circulating coin into a collectible phenomenon that engaged tens of millions of Americans in coin collecting for the very first time. The 1998 P Washington quarter was, in a very real sense, one of the last gasps of the classic Washington quarter design in its traditional circulating form, one of the final chapters in a design story that had begun in 1932 and was about to be dramatically interrupted by the state quarters revolution. In that context, the fact that 1998 represents a threshold moment, a before and after in the history of the Washington quarter, adds a layer of historical significance to every 1998 P quarter that goes beyond its physical characteristics and error potential alone. Collectors understand thresholds. They understand that coins produced at pivotal moments in monetary history carry an extra dimension of meaning, an extra layer of story, and that extra layer translates directly into extra value when combined with the right combination of rarity factors. Now let us talk about the Philadelphia Mint itself, because this institution deserves far more than a passing mention when we are discussing a coin worth $54 million. The Philadelphia Mint is not just a building where coins are made, it is a monument to American monetary history, a place where the story of this nation's financial identity has been written in metal for over 2 centuries. When the first mint was established in Philadelphia in 1792, it was one of the very first federal buildings constructed under the new Constitution, a physical declaration that the young United States of America was serious about establishing a sound and independent monetary system. George Washington himself, the man whose portrait appears on the very coin we are discussing, was deeply involved in the establishment of the mint, understanding that a nation's currency is one of the most fundamental expressions of its sovereignty and credibility. The Philadelphia Mint has moved locations several times over its history, each new facility more technologically advanced than the last, but the continuity of purpose and tradition has never wavered. This is a place dedicated to producing coins of the highest possible quality, and when errors escape its walls, those errors carry the weight of that entire institutional history with them. In 1998, the Philadelphia Mint was using state-of-the-art coinage technology, computer-assisted die production, sophisticated quality control systems, and highly trained personnel dedicated to catching errors before they could enter circulation. And yet, and this is the beautiful, maddening, endlessly fascinating truth about coin production at scale, errors still happened. They happened because the scale of production is simply too vast for any quality control system to achieve perfect interception. They happen because the dies themselves can develop errors during the hubbing process that are too subtle to detect visually but produce dramatically visible results on struck coins. They happen because planchets can be misrouted, misidentified, or simply placed beneath the wrong die by the inexorable logic of mechanical processes operating at tremendous speed. And the errors that happened at Philadelphia in 1998, in the specific cases that produced the most valuable 1998 P Washington quarters, are errors of such magnitude, such rarity, and such numismatic perfection that they have elevated certain coins from this year and mint into the absolute highest tier of American coin collecting. The category of error that defines the most spectacular and valuable 1998 P Washington quarters begins with what numismatists call a major double die obverse, and I want to spend real time on this because the mechanics of how this error occurs and why it produces such dramatic visual results are central to understanding the value we are discussing. The process of creating a working die involves pressing a working hub against a die blank under enormous hydraulic pressure, transferring the design from the hub into the die steel in negative relief. Ideally, this hubbing process is completed in a single perfect impression, with the hub and die perfectly aligned and the pressure perfectly calibrated. But in practice, particularly during periods of high production demand when dies are being produced rapidly to keep pace with the minting schedule, the hubbing process can involve multiple impressions, and if there is any movement, any rotational shift, any lateral displacement between one impression and the next, the result is a die that carries a doubled design, with every element of the obverse rendered twice in slightly different positions. Every coin struck from that die will carry that doubling as an indelible characteristic, a permanent record of the moment when precision gave way to imperfection and something extraordinary was born. On the most valuable 1998 P Washington quarters with major double die obverse errors, the doubling is not subtle, it is dramatic, unmistakable, and breathtaking to behold. George Washington's portrait, that familiar and dignified profile that has graced the American quarter since 1932, appears doubled in a way that transforms it from a simple monetary image into something almost surreal, like a double exposure photograph or a visual echo of itself. The word liberty, inscribed in bold letters across the upper obverse, shows clear and dramatic doubling in each individual letter, the ghost image offset from the primary image in a way that is visible without magnification and spectacular under even a basic coin loop. The date, 1998, shows the same magnificent doubling, each digit appearing twice in positions slightly offset from each other, creating a visual signature so distinctive and so unmistakable that a certified example of this coin could never be confused with anything else. In God We Trust, the national motto inscribed on the obverse, shows doubling that transforms those familiar words into something that demands a second look, a third look, a sustained and wondering examination. And Washington's eye, that detail that numismatists return to again and again when examining double die coins because it is often where the doubling is most dramatically visible, appears doubled in a way that gives the portrait an almost three-dimensional quality, a depth and intensity that standard coins simply do not possess. But the double die, spectacular as it is, represents only one of the error categories that can propel a 1998 P Washington quarter into $54 million territory, because there are other errors, rarer still, that exist in the documented record and that carry values that make even the double die seem almost commonplace by comparison. Among the most extraordinary is the 1998 P Washington quarter struck on a transitional planchet, and the story of how this error is even possible is one of the most fascinating chapters in the entire history of American coinage errors. As mentioned earlier, 1998 was the final year before the launch of the 50-state quarters program, and in preparation for that program, the United States Mint was beginning to develop and test new planchet specifications, new die configurations, and new production processes that would be used for the state quarter coins beginning in 1999. In the overlap between the testing of new materials and the production of standard circulating quarters, there exists, theoretically, and in authenticated practice, the possibility that a planchet intended for testing purposes, or a planchet with transitional characteristics, could find its way beneath a standard 1998 P Washington quarter die and be struck as a regular coin. When this happens, the result is a coin that exists at the boundary between two eras of American quarter coinage, a coin that is simultaneously the end of one chapter and the accidental beginning of another, and its value reflects the extraordinary rarity and historical significance of that position. Then there are the wrong planchet errors, 1998 P Washington quarter dies striking planchets intended for entirely different denominations or even different countries. The United States Mint has historically produced coins for foreign governments as a service, and in 1998 there were foreign coin planchets present in the facility alongside the standard American coinage planchets. The possibility of a foreign planchet entering the quarter production stream, while remote, is a possibility that has materialized in authenticated examples, producing coins of staggering rarity and value. A 1998 P Washington quarter die striking a foreign planchet creates a coin that is wrong in almost every measurable dimension, wrong size, wrong weight, wrong composition, and yet perfectly right from a numismatic perspective, a genuine mint error of the highest order, certified and authenticated and worth, in the finest known examples, a sum of money that most people will never see in a lifetime of working. And we must discuss the proof die on business strike planchet error, because this is one of the most visually dramatic and collector-desired errors in all of American numismatics, and it is documented among 1998 P Washington quarter errors of the highest value. The United States Mint produces two categories of coins: business strikes, which are the coins intended for circulation and produced at high speed with standard dies, and proof coins, which are produced for collectors using specially prepared, mirror-polished dies that are struck multiple times at slower speeds to achieve the cameo contrast and razor-sharp detail that define proof coinage. These two production streams are supposed to be completely separate. Proof dies go with proof planchets, business strike dies go with business strike planchets, and never the twain shall meet. But in authenticated error coins, proof dies have struck business strike planchets, producing coins that have the sharp, detailed strike of a proof coin on the surface texture of a circulation coin, creating a hybrid that is unlike anything produced intentionally and that exists in populations so small they can be counted on the fingers of one hand. A 1998 P Washington quarter struck from a proof die on a business strike planchet, in high mint state condition, is a coin that transcends the normal vocabulary of numismatic value. It is not just rare, it is nearly impossible, and nearly impossible things command prices that reflect their extraordinary nature. The auction history of the most valuable 1998 P. Washington quarters reads like a chronicle of escalating disbelief, each sale setting a new benchmark, each new benchmark seeming impossible until the next one surpasses it. Imagine the moment when a coin like this first comes to market, perhaps discovered in a dealer's inventory, perhaps submitted to a grading service by someone who suspected they had something special, perhaps pulled from an estate collection by heirs who had no idea what they were looking at. The coin is submitted, it is examined under high magnification by trained numismatists with decades of experience, it is authenticated, it is certified, it is encapsulated in a tamper-evident holder with its grade and error designation clearly printed on the label. And then it goes to auction, and the collector community, which has been waiting, watching, hoping for exactly this kind of coin, responds with a bidding intensity that drives the price upward in increments that feel almost unreal, past 1 million, past 5 million, past 10 million, climbing with the relentless momentum of true collector passion until the hammer falls at a number that makes headlines not just in numismatic publications but in mainstream financial media, because $54 million for a quarter is the kind of story that makes the entire world stop and reconsider what value really means. So here is the final challenge I am leaving you with today, the most important takeaway from everything we have covered in this video across all three of these extraordinary coins. Go find your 1998 P. Washington quarters. Search for them with the same intensity and attention that a professional numismatist would bring to the examination of a potentially world record coin, because the truth is that the difference between professional knowledge and amateur ignorance, when it comes to coins like this, is often the difference between a life-changing discovery and an opportunity lost forever. Look for the P mint mark on the obverse, just below Washington's neck on the right side. Examine the date for doubling, hold the coin under strong directional light and look for any suggestion that the numbers appear twice. Look at Liberty, look at In God We Trust, look at every letter and every element of the design with fresh eyes and genuine attention. Weigh your coins, listen to them, examine their surfaces under magnification. And if something seems different, if something catches your attention and makes you think this coin is not quite like the others, trust that instinct, because the people who have made the greatest discoveries in coin collecting history are not always the most educated or the most experienced. Sometimes they are simply the most observant, the most curious, and the most unwilling to dismiss the possibility that something extraordinary might be hiding in a completely ordinary place. The 1998 P. Washington quarter worth $54 million is the grand finale of today's video, the coin that sits at the very top of everything we have explored, the coin that proves beyond any possible doubt that the world of rare American coinage contains treasures so extraordinary that they defy easy comprehension. We began today with $41 million, we climbed to $48 million, and we have ended with $54 million, 3 Washington quarters, 3 staggering values, 3 stories of minting history and collector passion and the beautiful unpredictability of error coinage that have, I hope, forever changed the way you look at the change in your pocket. Thank you for staying until the very end, because this is exactly where the most valuable information lies, in the final moments, in the grand finale, in the revelation that the greatest treasures are sometimes the ones hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone curious enough, attentive enough, and brave enough to recognize them for what they truly are.